Hi, this is Ben from Q A Security, and we're here with another episode of the Q A Series. As you know, last week we started the Cybersecurity Q A Series, and in that series we described the 5 steps in breaking and solving cybersecurity questions. These steps were outlined and demonstrated with 10 crafted cybersecurity questions based on real-life events. On this week's episode, we bring you a list of power-packed questions touching all subject areas in cybersecurity, from general subject matters down to network-related topics, and we rounded it up with a programming language question. However, if you're yet to watch last week's episode, please do, and we promise that this series gets better as time goes on. So without consuming much of your time, shall we dive into this week's episode? The first question on this week's series is, Mr. Defcon works for a Fortune 500 organization that just rolled out a new security platform for all its employees. However, to be able to complete the registration steps on this platform, all employees are requested to provide their residential address and password. If Mr. Defcon proceeds to provide these informations, what factors involved in the authentication systems has or have been honored? So going back to the question, we broke out the key points from the whole jargons given to us. And the first key point here is the organization Mr. Defcon works for. Then what next happened? The organization rolled out a new security platform. To complete the registration steps on this platform, they were asked to provide their residential address and password. Now, the key point of the question here is what factors of the authentication system has been honored. So to get a better understanding of the various options given, let's understand the definitions. To understand this, let's have a definition of the various factors when providing an authentication system. The first factor involved in authentication system is knowledge. This is what the user knows. For example, password, access codes. The clue to remembering this is when you try to sign in and don't know your password, you click on the forget password link. The opposite, know, is forget. Next is possession. The second factor is something you have. This can be tokens, OTP, and so on. Clue to remembering this is when you try to log in into your bank, you are sent an OTP and the form requests you to share. You can only share what you have or what is in your possession. The third is inheritance. The third factor is something you are. This can be in form of biometric verifications, fingerprints, and so on. Example is unlocking your iPhone. Only you can be able to do such over facial recognition. The technology identifies if you are who you claim to be. The next is location. The fourth factor involved in authentication system is location. This is where the user is. Example, when trying to access a certain website, your browser pops up a geolocation notification. So also does this apply if your IP looks foreign to the application you are trying to access. You will be temporarily blocked to access the application. So having defined these 4 factors in authentication system, let's now go back to the question. We move down to the second key point in hierarchy. It says Mr. Defcon has to provide his residential address, which is location, and password, which is something he knows. And if we answer in the right order, it has to be location and knowledge. So option A says knowledge and location, which is wrong. Option B says knowledge and possession, which is wrong. Option C says location and possession, which is wrong. Option D says possession and inheritance, which is wrong. Option E says all of the above, which is wrong. And option F says none of the above. Going back again to the question, residential address means location first, and the second is password, which is knowledge. So we do not have the answer here. The right answer for this question is option F, none of the above. So let's move on to the next question. Question number 2. What protocol provides both confidentiality and integrity of the cybersecurity triad? The options we were given is IKE version 2, which stands for the Internet Key Exchange version 2, the AH, which is known as the authentication header, the ESP, which is known as the encapsulating security payloads. Option D says B and C, which is IKE version 2 and AH. Option E says all of the above. And option F says none of the above. To understand the right answer for this question, let's go back to the question again. It says the protocol which provides confidentiality and integrity. Now let's define the various protocols given. First is IKE version 2. IKE version 2 is a protocol used in negotiating key exchange and authenticating of the negotiating systems of a virtual private network, also known as a VPN. IKE version 2 provides confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. IKE version 2 stands for the Internet Key Exchange version 2. AH stands for Authentication Header. It is a protocol that ensures connectivity integrity. It provides authentication of the data origin and data integrity. Authentication header ensures that the data is not being replayed by a man-in-the-middle attack. ESP stands for Encapsulating Security Payload. It is a member of the IPsec protocol and provides data confidentiality and authentication, data integrity, between two connected computers using a VPN. Having read this various definition, what best suits the answer? Now, if we go to the options, again, we have IKE version 2, which provides confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. AH provides only integrity. ESP provides confidentiality and integrity. And the question says provides both confidentiality and integrity. They were never asked about authentication. So the best and the right option for this question is C, encapsulating security payloads. Tips on how to remember. IKE version 2 protocol. Data are encrypted, i.e. confidentiality. A connection must be established. Authentication. The key exchange of the negotiating system has to be verified. Integrity. Authentication header. System or message integrity must be verified. Authentication. YESP. Encapsulating. To shield or encrypt means data is protected and confidentiality is provided. Authentication for integrity check, meaning the communication system has to be known to each other. So moving on to the next question. What protocol is ESP? We're given option A, UDP, option B, TCP, option C, IP, option D, FTP. Option E, all of the above. Option F, none of the above. Although we've defined the encapsulating payload previously in question 2, let's further understand this. ESP, as previously explained in question 2, is an IP protocol. Tips. UDP is a user datagram protocol. TCP is transmission control protocol, while FTP is a file transfer protocol. So, having defined these various protocols, the correct answer is C, Internet Protocol. Moving on to the next question. What best describes an application used in a ransomware attack? Option A, crypt. Option B, cryptographic. Option C, cryptology. Option D, cryptolocker. Option E, all of the above. Option F, none of the above. If we go back to the question, the two key points here is an application, ransomware attack. So let's define the various options given. Crypt is the first encryption created and found in older versions of Unix-based system. Cryptographic is the definition of something encrypted with cryptography. Cryptology is the studying of cryptography or learning the art of cryptography. CryptoLocker is an application used by threat actors or ransomware gangs to encrypt files on a target machine. A CryptoLocker is a ransomware Trojan. Having defined the various options, the correct answer to this question is option D, CryptoLocker. Moving on to the next question. Question number 5. There are small files that are sent from the server to client browser each time you visit a site. What are these files and what is the attack on these files called? First of all, the first keyword here is small files. The second keyword here is sent from server to client browser each time you visit a site. Then on the major keyword, we have what are these files called? And what is the attack on these files as well called? We're given option A, cache and cache poisoning. B, cookie and cache poisoning. C, cookie and cookie theft. D, cookie and cookie poisoning. E, all of the above. F, none of the above. So to have a proper answer for this question, let's define the various options given. Cache, from web application perspective, is a collection of web pages, images, and files that are stored temporarily to enable quick access each time those files are requested again. These files are called cached data. Cache poisoning, on the other hand, is the act of corrupting the DNS by inserting fake information with the intent to cause cyber harm. Cookies, these are small files that are sent each time a communication occurs between a server and client browser. Cookie theft, the act of intercepting a legitimate user's cookie session, in bracket cookie data, and then using this cookie to gain unauthorized access to the website. Cookie poisoning, the act of altering stolen cookie data, then sending the altered cookie back as an attack vector. So having read these definitions, let's go back to the question. The first we ask is, what are these files? And by definition, cookie is the right answer. The name of those files are called cookies. Then the next question is, what is the attack on these files? And if we go down again to the same definition, we're given two options, cookie theft and cookie poisoning. So the attack on these files can be cookie theft or cookie poisoning. But if we look deeper, when a file is being attacked, the concept is to either steal or poison the files. So the correct option for this question can either be a C or D. Now let's break it further and look further deeply. Cookie theft is intercepting these files. It's also an attack. So looking at this question again, let's look deeply on this question. It's very tricky. This is where a technical mentality comes in. We're not told if the attack was to infect these files, and we're not told if this attack is based on stealing these files. So it's a generic term. We're in a loop between cookie theft and cookie poisoning. Now, for cookie theft, it's a form of attack, but the intent is to steal the cookie itself, while cookie poisoning is to alter the files and send back to the legitimate user as an attack vector. So since we're not given the option to what form of attack that is being conducted on these files, is it being stolen or is it being infected? So the correct answer for this option will be C and D. You have to be very, very technical, and sometimes this is how cybersecurity questions are. But let's see what our options are for this question. Our option is option D, cookie and cookie poisoning. So if you chose C, you're right. And if you chose D, you're also right. If you look at this question again, the second question that was asked was, what is the attack on this file? So an attack on a file can either be the purpose of infecting the file or stealing this file. So the correct answer for this question number 5 is C and D. Moving on to question 6. As a pen tester, you are given the domain name of an organization to resolve into IP address. What command is best for this purpose, assuming you are using a Kali Linux machine? Option A, we're given the netcat command. Option B, we're given the dig command. Option C, we're given nmap. Option D, we're given nslookup. Option E states all of the above. And option F states none of the above. So to get a better understanding of the right answer for this question, let's have a definition of the various options given. NC, which stands for netcat, is an application that allows data communication across a network. NSLOOKUP is an application which allows users to enter a hostname and then resolve the hostname to the corresponding IP address. Nmap, on the other hand, is a network scanning tool that is used to read data communications across a network. It is also used for host discovery, and with a series of commands can be used to enumerate services and their versions over a network. DIG, on the other hand, stands for Domain Information Grouper. It is used to discover or retrieve information about DNS name servers. So, having defined the various options given, what definition best suits the answer for this question? The definition that best suits the answer to this question is NSLOOKUP. Because NSLOOKUP, when you provide a domain name or a host name, NSLOOKUP will resolve the domain name into an IP address. So the correct answer to this question is option D, NSLOOKUP and the domain name. Moving on to question number 7. Mr. Linux and Mr. Windows work for Portswigger Academy. A meeting occurred during the week on some technical programming documentation. Mr. Linux created a file and sent it to Mr. Windows to read and make possible changes where necessary. What describes their rights or permissions to the file? Option A, Mr. Linux has read and write, while Mr. Windows has read and execute. Option B, Mr. Windows have read and write, while Mr. Linux has read and execute. Option C, Mr. Linux has full permissions, while Mr. Windows has full permissions as well. Option D, Mr. Windows has full permissions. Mr. Linux also has full permissions. Option E, Mr. Linux has full permissions and Mr. Windows has read and write permissions. Option F, none of the above. To have a clearer understanding of the right answer to this question, let's have a definition of the various permissions given in the options of the question. Read gives a user or group permission to read a file. Write gives a user or group the authority to modify a file or make changes to a file. Execute, in this case, of an application gives users or groups permission to execute the application. Full permissions. This allows users or groups to have full access or rights to a file. Usually, creator of a file has full access and decides on what permissions to give to other users. So let's now go back to the question. The first key point here is Mr. Linux, and the second key point is Mr. Windows. Then, the next key point here is documentation. So invariably, this means the file is a text file, a Word file, an Excel file, a PowerPoint, or even a PDF file, depending on what they use in writing the documentation of the programming language they are building the application on. Then the other key point here says Mr. Linux created the file, which means he is the owner of the file. And he sent it to Mr. Windows to read and make possible changes. This implies that Mr. Windows has the read permissions and the write permissions. So the final key point and the major key point to this question is what describes their rights or permissions to the file. So first of all, Mr. Linux is the creator of the file, so it means he has full permissions. Now that is out of the way, Mr. Windows has read and to make possible changes implies he has also a write permissions to the file. So looking through the option, what answer best suits the definition? First, we have to deal with the first person, which is Mr. Linux. Full permissions. Which option has full permissions first? Option D and E. However, for option D is for Mr. Windows, and Mr. Windows is not the owner of the file, but Mr. Linux. So we go with E first. Then the second option is read and write. And does option E specifies Mr. Windows having those two permissions? Yes, it does. So the correct answer is E. Mr. Linux has full permissions and Mr. Windows has the read and write permissions. Moving on to the 8th question. As a network engineer, your organization discovered that outsiders could infiltrate the local area network and insiders on the network connect directly to external resources. To prevent this from happening, what server is best suitable for this? Option A, we're given VPN server. Option B, we're given SSH. Option C, we're given DMZ. Option D, we're given proxy servers. Option E says C and D, and option F says none of the above. To have a proper understanding of the right option to this question, let's define the following. What is a VPN server? A VPN server provides the connection between a VPN and a computer remotely. SSH is a protocol which stands for Secured Shell and provides a connection between two communicating devices over an untrusted network. A DMZ is a perimeter network that acts as extra layer of security measures on an internal network. DMZ isolates the private and public network of an organization. Proxy servers is a network barrier that prevents external communication from accessing the internal network and prevents internal network from making external communications. So if we go back to the question again right now, it says outsiders can infiltrate the local area network, means they can communicate with the local area network, and insiders on the network can connect directly to external resources, means insiders can also establish a communication between the internal network and the external resources or the public internet. So the best server to prevent this from happening is a proxy server? And the correct answer is option D. Now you might ask, why not a proxy server and DMZ? DMZ acts as an extra layer of security, while proxy server is actually the barrier that prevents external communication and internal communication from occurring. In a complex network, a DMZ and a proxy server can be combined together. So our answer is option D, proxy server. Let's move on to question 9. Which of the following is a network monitoring tool? Option A, SolarWinds. Option B, Microsoft Network Monitor. Option C, Wireshark. Option D, A and C. Option E, A, B, and C. Option F, none of the above. To know the right answer to this question, let's have a definition of the various options provided. SolarWinds. SolarWinds is a commercially network monitoring tool. Microsoft Network Monitor is a packet analyzer that enables the analysis of packet flow and troubleshoots network problems. Wireshark is a network protocol analyzer that analyzes both packets and network traffic. And now, if we go back to the question, the key point here is network monitoring tool. So when you say network monitoring tool, it means both analysis of packets and protocols. So the correct answer to this is A, B, and C, which is what? Option E. Because all three tools defined are all network protocol or monitoring tools. Moving on to the final question of the day, which is on programming. What programming language uses cout as a method of printing out statements? Option A, we have the C# or C#. Option B, we have the C. Option C, we have Python. Option D, we have Ruby. Option E, we have C++. And option F, none of the above. To have a proper understanding of the right answer to this question, let's define the various options given. C#, this program uses console.write or console.writeLine to print out its statement. C, on the other hand, uses printf to print out statements, and printf stands for print formatted. Python, on the other hand, uses the print to print out statement. Ruby, print and put is used by Ruby language. Print outputs on the same line, and using put moves the cursor to a new line after printing statement. C++ uses cout in printing out its statement. So having read the various options given, what is the right answer to this question? The right answer to this question is option E, which is what? C++. Now let's move on to the trophy for the week. Congratulations, if you had all 10 questions right, you won a gold trophy. If you had 8 of the questions right, you won a silver trophy. And if you scored 7 out of 10 questions, you won a bronze medal. And for those who won nothing, better luck next time. And now we have come to an end of this week's episode. So if you find this video informative and educating well enough, please like the content, subscribe to our channel, turn on notification bell to know when we post another episode of this series. Also, do not forget to leave your comment below on how we can improve the content of our channel, and read the description below. See you next week in our next episode of the Cybersecurity Q A Series. Peace out.